Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrea Pruchová-Hrůzová, and on behalf of Fresh Eye, the platform for the study of visual culture, I would like to welcome you at tonight's program called Image versus Criticism. This event has been organized in collaboration with Věra Jirousové Award, which is the local organization that supports the growth of the local art criticism. This program is also possible thanks to the kind support of the local Ministry of Culture, State Cultural Fund, and the municipality of the city of Prague. For those who are meeting the Fresh Eye activities for the first time, let me just briefly introduce the range of programs that we offer to the local as well as to the international public. Every month, we organize public discussions or presentations which do focus on the pressing and seminal topics and themes of contemporary visual culture. But we also target to the younger audiences. We provide the elementary school and high school students with educative workshops, as well as we organize academic and scholarly driven conferences, which are aiming to connect the local and international researchers in the field of visual culture studies. Fresh Eye also runs its website, which you can find on the link www.fresh-i.cz or org. And on the website, you can find the archive of more than 250 lectures, which are accompanied by a text library. Along with the archive, you can find their monthly published information newsletter and our future program. For example, next month on November 19th and 20th, we will be organizing a 2-day online program on the topic of visual activism in collaboration with Nicholas Mirzev. But for now, tonight's program is on, and I would like to welcome and introduce the moderator of tonight's program, who is also a director of Věra Jirousové Award, and yet she's also the art critic, curator, and art historian. It's Eva Skopalova. So first of all, I would like to welcome Eva and thank her for the wonderful collaboration with the award of Věra Jirousová. And this way, I would like to ask her to introduce the program and our guest.
Thank you, Andrea, for having us here tonight. It's a great pleasure for us. I would like to invite warmly welcome all of you here as well. The Věra Jirousové Award is a platform for art criticism, and its purpose is intended to highlight this field and to support sometimes invisible authors. We would like to thank Ministry of Culture of the Czech Republic to support our growth and make it happen each year again. We are very pleased to be part of the Fresh Eye series today, and our topic is image versus critique. Therefore, this fall, we are opening various perspectives on ethics of art criticism. Hence, my great pleasure is to welcome here Gergely Nagy, who is a journalist, writer, and art critic. He spent several years in one of the biggest Hungarian news media company, HVG. Nowadays, he is a chief editor of online platform for art criticism, artportal.hu. Besides all that, he is a PhD candidate at LIT University in Budapest, with thesis focusing on the political interventions into the art system and reaction of the art community. Gergely, we are very happy and grateful for sharing your insight. It is a real pleasure having you with us tonight.
For having me.
Thank you very much. For our audience, just technically, we would ask you to write your comments and questions in a chat in YouTube. And we will address it at the end of our program once we open the discussion. But for now, the place is yours, and I'm very happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eva, for the nice words, nice introduction. And thank you, Andrea and David, for the help, for the technical help, and for the introduction before the program. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I think it's a really fantastic idea that an Art Critic Award is accompanied by a kind of knowledge-sharing platform, or a platform for art critics and art journalists. It's a really great idea, and I think this is something that we also should adopt here in Hungary, in my country. I would like to talk about tonight. I would like to talk about the critical positions. The positions of the critical writing, art criticism, and critical art practices here in Hungary today. This presentation will take 40-45 minutes long. I try to be as fast as possible. And after that, of course, there is a room for questions, comments, or even remarks. Or if there's anything that is not that clear or problematic, just let us know and just drop us a line. Now I share my screen with you guys. Hopefully it's going to work. Is it okay? I hope so. Should I just try to start? Okay. So my name is Gergelyho Nagy. I'm a journalist, an editor, and author. As Eva mentioned, I'm in charge for Art Portal, which is a Hungarian website dealing with contemporary visual arts and the culture, political context of the contemporary art scene here in Hungary. I also a contributor for East Art Max, which is an international collaboration of Art Portal and 4 other art magazines in the region. I will go into details in a bit. And I'm also one of the founders of Biennial Budapest, which is the largest civil independent art initiative in the country, and probably one of the largest, or if not the largest, in the region as well. My presentation tonight will consist 3 parts. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about my practices, not like it's super interesting or super important, but maybe it tells a little bit about, not just about me, but also about the situation here and the context here. In the second part, I would like to talk about the cultural, political context of our work here in Hungary today, the changes we witnessed in the recent years, and in the third part, I would like to talk about the strategies and the models of the independent art scene here and the questions it faces. I always lived and worked in Budapest, and I wanted to start with this image tonight because I always contemplated leaving and join the ever-growing art emigration or artist emigration from Hungary. But I never went. I always stayed here because I have a kind of love and hate relationship with this city and with this country. I always stayed, just like Chekhov's 3 sisters, who always talking about leaving, but after all, they always stay in. Here in this image, you see the 3 sisters played by 3 male actors. This is a performance of a theater/performance company back in 1975 in a private apartment in Budapest. That was a very interesting theater group, and this was one of their last performance here in the city. Later, they went to Paris and then left for New York, and they became quite famous in the 80s under the name Squad Theater. I just wanted to start this presentation with this image, with this detail from this performance as a kind of metaphor of the positions of the critical intellectuals here in this country. A little bit about my activities. As we mentioned, I'm in charge for Art Portal. This is a website dealing with contemporary art and the social and political context of contemporary art. I wouldn't say that this is an independent website. We have a private owner. This is a company. Formerly, the legal entity behind it is a company. The private owner is a art collector, but he's not involved in the contemporary art scene. He's much more involved in classical art, and he has a huge collection of manuscripts. So I hope that there is no conflict of interest here. He maintained and supported this website at the beginning, but gradually he left and drifted a little bit away from the actual daily work of the website, which is good if you consider the content, but not that good if you consider the circumstances. I started to work for this website in 2013, and we tried to reposition it with my colleagues to focus more on the contemporary side of the visual art, also the culture, political issues, questions here in Hungary, and also the art market. This is also important because we have quite a few readers who are art collectors themselves and spend quite a few euros on the art market here in Hungary. And we also wanted to give it to a regional focus. We decided that we don't apply for any state funding and any public funding because the National Arts Fund became more and more problematic in terms of the professional decision-making. The decision-making became less and less professional and more politically motivated. And as much as we were talking about culture political issues, we won less and less grants throughout the years. So at a certain point, we decided not to take part in this game and try to be on our own and try to establish new activities by which we can maintain the website. One of these activities were our courses. Very simply, we were talking about the issues, the questions of a contemporary art to the audience, to people who are interested in art because they are reading about it, because they are the readers of the art portal, or because they are art collectors and want to know more about the scene, more about the current status of contemporary art. And these courses, of course, made some income for us by which we could maintain our activities, but also it was a learning process for us because we could meet almost everybody on the art scene. We could establish good personal relationships with all the stakeholders and actors of the contemporary art scene in Budapest. And also we met our readers, which was a huge experience, the actual people who you write your articles to. It's not that common in times of the digital journalism that you can somehow meet your readers personally. This was a really fascinating kind of experience. And one of the most interesting things we also took part and still taking part is the East Art Max project I just mentioned before. Just a couple of words about it. This is an international collaboration of 5 art/culture magazines in the region. We have a Czech partner, Arttalk. You might know it well. Our friends at Arttalk, they do a fantastic job. We have a Polish partner, the Block magazine, which is an English language magazine focusing on the East Central European region. We have Revista Arta from Romania, which is a website of a print art magazine. The print magazine is a little bit probably old-fashioned, but the online version is much more kind of up-to-date and progressive. And we have Capital from Slovakia, which is not an art and culture magazine on the first place, more like a political and economical magazine, but they have a very strong culture department. What East Art Max is doing is based on 2 different activities. Our project has 2 legs, so to say. One leg is a kind of content sharing platform. We are changing and translating and publishing articles on our project website. And the other leg, the bigger leg, is a special program, a special project for art journalists, art critics in the region, residencies, research trips, and a publishing platform for them, grants and publishing platform for them. There's a gap here to fill because, as you may know, there are quite a few residency programs or travel grants for artists and curators all around Europe, but not so much for art critics and art journalists. And we kind of recognize that there is something to do here. And there's also something to do with the fact that we don't know too much each other, or used to know a little less about each other before here in this region. And it was really good to find these partners. Originally, the idea came from the Czech partner, I have to say. We somehow found each other throughout this process and started this collaboration with the others as well. And East Art Max was a fascinating experience for us. We published quite a lot of articles. Unfortunately, the content of East Art Max now under the umbrella of Art Portal, this is not a proper solution for the publishing side. We couldn't establish an independent website for East Art Max. That's our main goal for the times ahead. But you can find really interesting content under the East Art Max menu on the Art Portal website. This actual article uneasy transformation was one of the best, I think, as in my opinion, at least. This is about the contemporary art scene in Sarajevo and how they are dealing with the common past with the Serbian community. Altogether, there were 9 countries involved in this collaboration throughout the years: Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Macedonia as well, out of Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, and Hungary. And we would like to extend this network. So probably in the near future, we're going to collaborate with a Berlin-based organization called Critic and Culture, and try to extend our activities towards Berlin, or at least East Berlin, to stay close to the original idea of concentrating on the East Central European region. My third activity, and this is the last part of the first part, I'm a member, we can say the founding member of Biennial Budapest. More precisely, I am one of the founders of the civil association, civil organization behind Biennial Budapest. is I think you might know something about it. This is quite a large independent art initiative in Hungary. One of the main characteristics of this program is that it does not apply for any state funding. It refuses the collaboration with the Hungarian state on any level, and does not use the culture infrastructure run by the state here in Hungary. That means that we had to find some other kind of models to operate, and also we had to find spaces and places for exhibitions and for the performances and for the events of the 3 editions of Biennial. So therefore we use empty shops, we use old industrial facilities, we use the streets and the squares of Budapest, we use the outskirts of the city, private apartments, just like in the 70s on the first slide I showed you tonight, and even sometimes infiltrating into institutions. You can see that small image on the right side. Probably it's the left for you, I don't know, it's the right for me. It's a performance that was taking place in the Hungarian parliament. That's the main hall of the parliament, and I think it was the 2nd edition in 2017. But being off is not just about the off spaces. It's not just about finding a position where you can show your work. Being off is also an attitude and also a kind of standpoint and position that the whole organization uses. It was inspired by the writing of Svetlana Boym, the Russian artist, filmmaker, and writer, and one of her texts, Of Modern Theory. It was a kind of a manifesto named Of Modern. In this writing, in this text, she introduced the term of modern and suggests it to use instead of the ever-changing prepositions like post-modern, pre, anti, neo-modern, etc. Because these propositions suggest a constant kind of movement forward or against. And instead of this, she suggests to take a different position, to step aside. It's like a Broadway, off-Broadway kind of positioning. Off is a critical view, and staying off, staying away means to divert from the old routines, to find our own path, to find our own form of operation. And I think that's the main point here as for Off Biennial, not only the refusal of the collaboration with the state, not only to use the off spaces and to try to bring the art activities into different spaces, not the wide cubes. It's more about the critical view of the art production and the art events and the big art biennials as a format. So we are not flying in ideas, and we are not flying in the big names of the international art scene. Instead of this, Off Biennial is trying to embrace the local art production, the things that are happening locally, the entities, the actors of the local art field, and try to find solutions for the local programs and take it to an international level. is organized by a small group, no institutional background, which is not a good thing if we are talking about the everyday operation and the sustainability. But it's on the other hand, it's a good thing because it offers a constant kind of change. We have to find new ways of operation for every single edition of biennial. And actually get a big chance to show the art production of the current Hungarian scene, because it was invited to the Documenta next year, along with 8 or 9 other organizations, or even more. We were invited by the Ruan Group, the Indonesian group that is in charge for the curatorial work of the next edition of Documenta. And I think it's a great opportunity to put this activity to another level and to address these local questions and local problems on an international level. So that was my first part so far. I would like to talk a little bit about the context we are operating here in Hungary, the political and political context. This image is, I think it was made in 2017. This was one of the events of Biennial, a kind of ironic artistic demonstration and protest on the street. And this banner says, "We are glad that we can demonstrate. We are glad that we are allowed to demonstrate." When I am thinking about the position of an art website, of a critical website, art criticism, art writing, I always think about 2 different contexts: the media context and the artistic context, the art field, the media field and the art field. I think we are operating on both fields. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the media fields of today's Hungary. This person is Tucker Carlson, one of the main figures of Fox News, the Trumpist media in the United States. He's a news anchor and he's a TV presenter. And recently, just 1 or 2 months ago, he presented his daily show from Hungary for 1 week long, with the support of the Hungarian government, with the financial support of the Hungarian government. The headline here says, "Hungary, this is a small country, which is an example for the whole world," it says. I totally agree with Tucker Carlson, but maybe not in the sense he means it, but a different sense. He adores Viktor Orbán very much. He adores the current Hungarian government, and he made a long interview with him as well. I think Viktor Orbán and his system, his regime, so to say, is a product of our society. He and his activities were created by ourselves. I think his figure is quite important when we are talking about the current proceedings in Hungary, but I don't want to talk about him entirely. I just would like to show some of the artistic reaction, one of the artistic reactions to his personality and his presence. There were several attempts to address the questions in connections with him by the art scene, and I think this gesture was one of the strongest. This is a work by Tibor Horváth. Now he's living in Berlin as a member of the ever stronger and ever bigger artistic emigration from this country. The title is The Prime Minister of Hungary. This is a life-size box exhibited in a gallery space, and there's a slot on it, which is a kind of upholstered slot, so you can put your hands in the box, and there in the box there's a body lying in a proper suit, in a proper shoes, proper neckties, and that's the Prime Minister himself. You can touch his body and you can touch his face as well, and you can feel that his eyes are opened. The basic idea of this work came to Tibor Horváth from the School of the Blind students here in Budapest, because in their institution, in their school, on the corridors, there are little statues that they can touch and they can feel. And among the statues, there are portraits of the the current political life in Hungary. So the students, the blind students, can get more closer to the politicians, and they can touch them, and they can feel them, and they can make a kind of image for themselves about them. That was the basic idea behind this artistic gesture. As for the media, going back to the political context, as for the media, I think it's quite important that there's an international and ever-going international kind of attention towards what is going on in the Hungarian media. Reporters Without Borders, which is a civil organization for journalists, which is dealing with the press freedom, with the state of the press freedom in the world. They have a ranking in every year, and on the World Press Freedom Index in 2021, this year, Hungary was the 92nd out of 180 countries, which is a really bad position. In fact, it was worse year by year. We went down back in 2013 when I started to work for Art Portal. Hungary was the 56th on this list, and now it's below 90. There's only one country from the European Union that has a worse position than Hungary, and that is Bulgaria. But I don't think that the Bulgarian media situation is significantly worse than the Hungarian. Reporters Without Borders, studying and researching different aspects, of course, the freedom of press, the censorship, self-censorship situation, the ownership structures of the media, the access to the information, the qualified information, the access of the journalists, and the access also the audience, the readers. And considering all these aspects, they give this position to the Hungarian media freedom, press freedom. In this sad story, in this grim story, there were several stages and phases, and one of the special moments was in 2018. This is an article from the New York Times, and it's about a profound change that happened in November 2018 in Hungary. Literally hundreds of private Hungarian news outlets have been simultaneously donated by their owners to the government circles, to the government directly. Literally, that's what happened. Individually, these owners of these media outlets decided to offer and to give, to donate their own property, their own media outlets to the government. And they established a new kind of media holding, which is formally a foundation, but practically it's more like a company. This is the Central European Press and Media Foundation, KESMA, the short form in Hungarian. And KESMA is ruling almost the entire Hungarian media landscape if you consider the local newspapers, the local magazines, the local radio stations, television channels, even street media like big billboard companies. They could cover almost the whole country. And how does it look like in reality? These are 16 different local newspapers owned by the KESMA and directed by the MediaWorks, which is a content managing and content making company behind them. These daily newspapers, they use the same image, the same title, the same content, the same political message delivered every single day. And this content is made in a central kind of editorial room in Budapest and distributed and pushed aggressively to these media outlets. In fact, there is a designated person in the Hungarian government, Antal Rogán, who is the minister of the prime minister's cabinet, namely in the government, but he is responsible for the media and for the propaganda. He spends lots of money in advertisement and in content making, directly and indirectly in these media outlets. And with the most important editors and content makers, he meets regularly, almost every week. And he gives directions and he gives instructions to them personally. This is how it looks like in terms of the proportions of the Hungarian media. The Kesma, the big fountainhead I was just talking about, and the public service media, which is of course not public service anymore, but more like the distribution of the central messages, main messages of the government, and the pro-government, the friendly, so-called friendly media, is now covering almost 80% of the Hungarian media landscape altogether. The other day, I came across a pretty interesting report, research material that was put together at the CEU, the Central European University, formerly in Budapest, now operating in Vienna. And this research was about the pro-government media in the region. It was put together by Marius Dragomir. I don't have a slide about it because it's too fresh information even for me. And he's talking about this report is talking about not just the state directly administrated media, like the so-called public service media, but also the state captured media. This means that it's not owned by government circles. It has private owners, namely independent owners, but they are too close to the government circles, to the central propaganda. Or if they are not too close, they cannot rely on any kind of news resource out of the state-run news agency, MTI, Magyar Távirati Iroda, the Hungarian news agency, which has a contract with all these media outlets. They cannot use any other news resource, and of course that's pretty much distorted kind of news service provided by MTI, the state-run news agency. This infographics was put together by Átlátszó and Mérték. Átlátszó is a investigative journalism group and website. Mérték is a research group that is dealing with the current state of the Hungarian news media. The word Átlátszó, the word itself means transparent, and Mérték means measure. So these are two organizations that worth checking out. Probably they have lots of material in English as well. How does it look like on a political level? What do we have since 2010? I think you are all familiar with the attempts to find a right term for what is going on in our region, and especially in Hungary and in Poland as well, and it started in Slovenia as well. Illiberalism, illiberal democracy, guided democracy, managed democracy, gray zone, even autocracy. There were several attempts to find the right expression, the right term for the system that is under construction here. I think the term fits the most or applies the best is the one that Andreas Schädler, an Austrian political scientist, started to use in his book, Electoral Authoritarianism, The Dynamics of Unfree Competition. That's the title of the book. So he uses the electoral authoritarianism. And I found it really relevant because of the fact that it sort of recognizes that the central element of these regimes and the operation of these regimes is the parliamentary elections in every 4 years as a source, as an ultimate source of legitimacy. So these are big events here. Staged events, so to say, stage plays to provide the legitimacy for the ruling party, but they never take the risk of a proper kind of election, relatively free, but never fair. So they try to ensure that the current government, the current governing party or parties cannot be removed. Therefore, they're using quite a few tools. I just listed here a few: gerrymandering, distorted media landscape that I just mentioned before. using the public resources only for their private interest, almost limitlessly. And there is one thing that is also important, the constant campaigning. The Hungarian political climate is constantly hot. It's constantly fueled by the centrally designed and executed political campaigns. The other day I heard a quite remarkable expression for it by one of the chief editors of MediaWorks, the company that is creating the content for the websites and local newspapers I just showed not so long ago. László Néző, he's responsible for some of these centrally delivered messages and content. And he uses the word enemy management. So that's what these constant campaigning is doing. Enemy management. They try to designate an enemy and they try to focus the hatred, the aggression, the actual sentiments towards these groups. These can be social groups like recently the LGBTQ community, very unfortunately, or the Roma community just before, or they can be single persons like George Soros. I think you all know about the very heavy anti-Soros campaign in Hungary. In my opinion, that was the first centrally designed and executed anti-Semitic campaign since the Holocaust in this country. I think that's really serious how they did it and how they executed and continued this campaign until the very day. Of course, the constant enemy, the constant big power that we have to fight against is the European Union, Brussels. But outside of Brussels, there are other enemy groups they try to picture and they try to use in these campaigns. So they try to ensure that the outcome of the elections are never doubtful. They try to ensure their positions for good, if you like. But this regime, at least until now, never really crossed the red line of physical aggression. On these images, I'd show one or two occasions when they did. The image up there, the socialist parliamentary member István Nyako is trying to submit a referendum proposal to the National Electoral Office. According to the Hungarian legislation, you have to submit your proposal personally. But on that day in 2016, he was physically blocked by these guys, these bold guys who just gathered around the entrance of the office. And of course, the police never discovered who they were. But you could meet them in some other places in Budapest. Also, these security groups were in charge in the city park, where a huge museum development is going on. 4 different museum buildings is under construction these days. And there were lots of demonstrations throughout the recent years in the city park by the local inhabitants of the city and some other environmental groups and other activist groups against these big developments. And there were some occasions when these kind of informal aggression groups, security guards, they try to keep the demonstrators away, sometimes pretty aggressively. What's going on in the art scene, in the culture institutional scene? Almost the same. We have an optical illusion. There are institutions funded by the public, maintained by the government, maintained by the taxpayers. But these institutions are more and more alienated or ripped away from the actual artistic scene, from the existing and vivid culture scene, and from the culture practitioners as such. I really like this work. This is not, there's nothing political in it. It was made in 2004, and I think the original intention was something else. It was the decoration for a big exhibition in the Kunsthalle in Budapest. Now the Kunsthalle is one of the irrelevant institutions who are dealing with the official culture, big supporter of the government, and they turned away from the local art scene, and of course the contemporary art world does not really want to collaborate with them as well. So it's a little bit isolated these days, this institution. And I think this picture tells something about the situation. Nothing is the same as it used to be. Some international listings again, just like the Reporters Without Borders not so long ago. This is the Free Muse, which is a civil organization based in Denmark, and they are dealing with they are monitoring the artistic freedom, the situation of the artistic freedom in the world, in every single countries, and they have a report in every single year. And in their 2019 report, they dedicated a whole chapter to the Hungarian situation, and they were talking about the state of the artistic freedom in my country, and they identified some main problems regarding the state of the artistic freedom. And one of the problems was, and still is, that the government uses strong financial incentives, or tools much rather, to encourage self-censorship. This simply means that they are channeling the money from the culture budget towards the friendly pockets. It's not easy to find funding for your activities. When Eva at the beginning was talking about, and Andrea also, about the support of the culture ministry in Czech Republic, I was a little bit envy because it's impossible these days in Hungary. And I would go a little bit beyond than Free Muse did 2 years ago. And I would say this is not the encouragement of the self-censorship. This is the actual kind of structural censorship. The government does not need to ban any artwork or any artistic practice. The only thing they do, they cut the fundings and they limit the opportunities. And when an artist cannot find funding for his or her work, cannot find institutional partners on the public funded institutional scene, on the bigger institutional scene, cannot find spaces for exhibition, cannot have access to certain media, then it is a sort of a structural censorship as a result, because this carefully designed structure automatically does the political selection. This is very smart. And up until this time, the government did not ban any activity on the art field. I'm not sure if the newest LGBTQ legislation will not mean a change in this practice, because it is banning sort of the LGBTQ community, these activities on the art scene. Towards the end of the second part, culture policies, what do we have? I don't want to really go into details. You can see the bullet points here, some main points that I found relevant in terms of the culture political situation here. The fact that we do not have a culture ministry since 2010 made a space for big institutions to serve and to function like shadow ministries. Some institutions here in this new structure gathered lots of money and lots of assets around themselves, and they serve like power centers and fortresses in this situation. These are not my words, these power centers and fortresses. This kind of military metaphors are used by the prime minister, but originally these words were used by one of the ideologists behind the government culture policies, Márton Békés, a young historian, a young researcher. And he had the sentence in one of his writings: to embed the political system in a cultural era, to enter the new phase of urbanism, to enter the new phase of this regime, we have to embed the political system. It's time to embed the political system in a culture era. And this was quoted by the Prime Minister himself in one of his speeches. And this is what is happening now. They want to rule, simply just rule the culture scene, handling the fundings, handling the institutional positions, and keep everything under control. Of course, there were protests against these proceedings above their Occupy Ludwig in 2013, after a very controversial process of appointing a new director. Students, activists, and artists occupied the Ludwig Museum symbolically and physically as well for almost 2 weeks. I was talking about the power centers just before. How does it look like? This is Szilárd Demeter, up on the center, the director of one of the big museums, state-run museums, the Literary Museum, which is not the most important museum, but a pretty important archive for the Hungarian literature. He gathered lots of other smaller institutions under him, lots of assets, lots of money. Just one single example, millions of euros there are under Szilárd Demeter for supporting culture journalism, for supporting art criticism, art magazines, culture magazines. So if you try to run your culture magazine, not worth turning towards the National Arts Fund, which is shrinking, which is smaller and smaller. You have to find your way to Szilárd Demeter to apply for some grants. But it's a personal decision whether you want to collaborate a kind of power center of the current government, the current regime, or not. He's a very controversial figure, and they give you grants, they give you support, they give you money for your art magazine, for your art criticism practices. They don't ask directly anything, but gradually you get involved in all those activities around these persons, and it questions your kind of position, your kind of independency. Towards the end now, one of the big developments that are going on these days in the Hungarian culture scene is the privatization of the public culture. These power centers gaining lots of money and assets, as I just mentioned it, and now they found a legal form for it. And this is a new phenomenon. It started last year. The short form is KEKVA. This is a short name for Public Trust Funds Performing Public Functions. Actually, it's a tricky legal constructions. The government outsourced, delivered huge assets to private foundations that are performing public functions, but they do not have parliamentary control above them, public control above them. They are shielded from the public scrutiny, so to say. We have 33 of such big foundations today: universities, culture institutions, even lands, empty lands, and lands that are good for real estate development, even industrial facilities. Lots of wealth and assets and money concentrated in certain hands that are close to the government circles, but they are in between a public trust fund and in between a private fund. One thing is sure, that nobody is representing in these foundations the public interest. There are only 5 universities remained that are not part of these public funds. One of ELTE, I am attending that university these days. On the picture, you see students of SFE, the University of Film and Theatre in Budapest. This was the only university that showed up and organized conscious resistance against this kind of so-called model change to transfer the university to the private hands. And they occupied their university buildings 1 year ago, September, October, and they had the blockade for more than 70 days. It was a magnificent kind of uplifting series of events. They are theater students, film students, and they know how to build up a performance. It was a kind of a performative act of rebellion, act of resistance. It was really fantastic, and they gained a lot of support from the audience, from the everyday people on the street. It was really fascinating. They had the blockade for 70 days, and after leaving the building, they administratively left the school as well. Almost more than half of the students left the university, and they formed a new entity, a new school under the name Free SFA, Free University of Film and Theatre in Hungary. And the reason why I mentioned this particular story is the outcome, because it's really interesting. They just started a program not so long ago, which is called Emergency Exit. The students and the teachers of the Free SFA, the Free University, the newly established organization, they collaborate with other universities in Europe, 8 other universities in Europe, and the other art universities adopt the students of the Budapest-based Free SFA. They accept their credits, accept their studies, and they deliver their diplomas. So they don't have to apply for their diplomas to the official structure. They just made a detour and try to establish a new situation, a new institutional structure. And the reason why I mention this, because it's something new in the landscape, at least here in Hungary, but probably in Europe as well. To establish these kind of translocal, transnational collaborations between formal and informal institutions, between institutions and meta-institutions, to provide a kind of protection to a certain group that is under pressure by the local governments. These students stayed in Budapest, but they study in other universities, and I find it really fascinating. I don't know if we can adopt these kind of structures into the art field as well, but I know some similar structures, similar organizations on the field of journalism. For example, Bellingcat or ICIJ, investigative journalism organizations, functioning and operating more or less the same way. There's no center, so it cannot be beheaded, it cannot be caged in a certain location. There's no center. They spread out in Europe and elsewhere, and they cooperate loosely or sometimes more closely with each other. I hope that this emergency exit program is not a singular gesture of solidarity by the universities outside, but it can be a sustainable model. Towards the end of this presentation, if you would like to go more deeper into the proceedings, what happened in Hungary in the recent years, there's a freely downloadable booklet, a report that was put together by OHA, which is an informal network of Hungarian teachers and academics. I also had the privilege to collaborate and to co-work in this, to completing this report. This is about the dismantling of culture, education, science, and the media in Hungary since 2010. You can download it from the website of OHA, Oktatói Hálózat, a network of academics in English. Just the last couple of minutes, what kind of strategies and questions the independent art scene, the critical art scene, the critical writing have in Hungary these days? What kind of questions we are facing? Of course, self-organization became more and more important throughout the recent years. But instead of self-organization, I would suggest to use, or at least it seems to be more precise for me, interdependence. Like Kuba Sreder, the Polish curator and art writer, mentioned in one of his writings, interdependent structures. We have to kind of realize that we have to rely on each other, and we have to really cooperate. We have to build up structure on these cooperations, cross-border, international, translocal. Just mentioned the Free SFS situation, translocal kind of collaborations. Of course, the funding, the sustainability is a big question. And it's also important not to be exposed too much to the big foreign funds, to those who deliver the money from outside. I think it's an existing kind of danger, just as the opposite. to become isolated in the local context and to produce something to outside to the foreign funds. I just listed some corporations here. East Europe Biennial Alliance is one of them. Members are the of Biennial, the Prague Matter of Art Biennial, the Warsaw Biennial, and the Kiev Biennial. They are the founding members. And probably on a small scale, also East Art Max is something like a collaboration, an interdependent collaboration like these ones. We have models here, different functions. I don't want to really go into details, just wanted to drop up a couple of names. If you come to Budapest, you can try to seek and visit these places. Jurányi Incubator House, for example, that's the place where I am sitting right now. This is a hub for organizations, artists, and theater groups as well. We have a wonderful theater room here. This is a former school building. Interestingly enough, my mother was studied here many, many years ago. Here in the school building, there are a lot of groups operating, civil organizations, artists as well. And this is a very exciting kind of alternatives culture center that we are maintaining and running here. FKSE is a civil organization for young artists, kind of an entry point into the existing institutional system. They are running a gallery space, and they have artist studios for rent on a friendly price as well. Goya is a new entity. It's a co-op. They share the income and they try to maintain the culture and civil activities from these incomes. Goya is a big building and a home for a few very important civil organizations. We have some others to mention. I don't want to go into every single one, but probably I would mention Art Quarter Budapest down there, that big building with the bricks. It's a private initiative by a German citizen who came to Budapest and saw that there is a room for activities on the art scene, and we are lacking in the institutional background. So he established an institution in a former industrial facility, and Art Quarter Budapest became really something remarkable. They have art studios, they have a residency program, they have exhibition halls, they have food production there in the house, they have even music production. So it's a little hub, or not that little, a bigger and bigger hub for kind of independent activities. The last slides for tonight, the very last one, open for discussion. How long we can maintain here, everywhere in the region, these fragile structures, probably as long as the actors of this scene, the stakeholders, can keep on and can keep up their activities. The main question, at least here in Hungary today, whether there will be enough energy and enough knowledge and enough experience and enough strength to hold on, to form places out of the spaces and find right models for functioning. Thank you for your attention for tonight. This was my presentation. I hope it wasn't too long. Sorry for being too long. I don't see your faces, which is a little bit kind of weird for me. So I try to escape from the PPT file and go back to our friends there. Hi.
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for your deep insight. It's well, I really want to say it's the first time I hear it, but unluckily I cannot, because it's something very familiar. I know from my place. We can share and we can identify with what you just said. So it's very frightening for us, for me, definitely. And well, thank you for sharing that, because when we are deep down with somebody else, it's always better to share the misery. You are not alone.
Yeah, we are in this together, right?
Exactly. First of all, I just don't want to say that the situation is as urgent as in Hungary here. Definitely not. But I can recognize still the same structures which emerges, and it's something we have to alarm. We have to alarm, and we have to urge people to see and definitely fight against, because we cannot let it grow just as it is. There is still something which strikes me the most. If there is a possibility to survive in a enemy structure, as you describe it, and somehow trying to do our culture business and trying to change it, and trying to change it within, not build something that completely different, but trying to go inside the enemy structure and move it somehow to better, different place. If that is possible, what do you think?
You mean to infiltrate into
Exactly.
the existing structures
Exactly.
and trying to do something from within?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the context is different. Here in Hungary, just before the regime change in 1989, there was a kind of an attitude in certain circles of the society, even members of the Communist Party back then, trying to disintegrate from within.
Mm-hmm.
And it was considered as a way of or as a format of the resistance. But I think it's dangerous, because these structures are stronger than individual persons, and
Mm-hmm.
even, at least for me, I don't know, but it's just my opinion or my attitude. Even getting closer to these institutions and these structures is,
Yeah. I understand. It's playing with fire. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a question from the audience. Anna is saying hi to you and asking if there is a new institution, Q Contemporary, which focuses on promoting CEE art. What do you think about it? What is a new type of foreign institutions that come to Hungary?
Oh, hi, Anna. This is Anna Remesova, our friend.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah, good question. This is a new phenomenon. They are pretty new here in the city. This is a private institution founded by a Hong Kong-based art collector. I'm so bad with names just tonight. I should remember, because once I met her and we had a short conversation as well. I think it's a commercial kind of initiative that she has. She's a collector, and she bought up art pieces and artworks from the late 60s, 70s, 80s, even the contemporary art. And originally, the plan was that there will be two parts of this institution. One is a commercial side in London, and a non-profit side, a non-profit institution, an exhibition space, and library here in Budapest. But they called off the London side of the project, and they now organize the commercial activities in Hong Kong. I don't know exactly how she found the actual building that she renovated here in the heart of the city. This is a very expensive area, very expensive building, but I think she found it through the Hungarian state representation in Hong Kong. So the Hungarian state circles somehow got involved, and also the big Chinese initiative, state initiative of development, I only know the Hungarian name of it. It's kind of the Silk Road, kind of new Silk Road kind of initiative. One road, one way, one belt, one road. That's the name of it. It's not funded by the Q Contemporary is just not funded by the Chinese initiative, but it's also in the culture part of it. I don't know too much about them. Basically, I try to welcome kind of all private, actors who are coming to this place and show some interest in the local art. We'll see. Queenie Lowe, that's her name. Queenie Lowe. She's the founder and the main figure behind it.
Okay, let's wait. Let's wait for the whole picture. Maybe we will wait for another question or comment or anything from the audience. And while waiting, maybe there is still for me a question always. Where is the line between art and activism? Because there is such a fragility between both of them. And sometimes when we are so focused on politics, we just forget about art and vice versa. So how we can handle that? How we can maintain what is nice about art, the politics, the beauty, but also but also the meaning and the deep insight into the society and what we need to do and what we need to change. So, what do you think? What's your opinion?
I'm afraid that I don't have a proper answer. And probably it's impossible to draw this line that you mentioned just between art and activism, because when you try to alterate between the two sides, you sometimes feel that you are more like an activist than an artist, and more like an artist than an activist, and then you can lose on both sides. As for my personal interest, I right at this moment, I don't really see too much sense in any art activities that does not deal with the social context on some level, not necessarily on an activist level, on a kind of interventional kind of level, but also just to get in terms with it, just to pay attention to it, just to try to deal with it, try to make an opinion, make a stance, make a standpoint on it. When I was talking about a little bit earlier about the official and unofficial culture, the institutions that are alienated from the local art scene, the aesthetics of the regime, of the different regimes, they always try to emphasize the comfortable side, the comforting side, the beauty side of the art, which does not cause any trouble, doesn't cause any problem. It's interesting. The Hungarian National Bank. This is also the privatization question, but I come back to your question. The Hungarian National Bank just established a huge art collection. They spent enormous amount of money on the Hungarian art scene. There was an article in the Art Talk, and also it came out in English and Hungarian in Art Portal and East Art Max. There was an article about it. They bought lots of artworks from commercial galleries, and when you take a look at the collection itself, it's a high quality collection. But when you take a closer step, almost entirely abstract, geometrical, abstract art on a high level, on a very high quality level. There was nothing in this collection that poses or raises any kind of question or dissent or any kind of comment on the existing status quo. And it was so, and it tells a lot about the attitudes, about the attitude of the officials and the attitude of some part of the art scene. I don't want to I wouldn't want to say that this is bad or this is useless. I don't think this is useless art. Any kind of art activity can have some use, can be useful. But here in a fragile situation we are in, not only in this part of Europe, but elsewhere as well, the climate situation and many other problems. The only thing that makes sense, at least for me, is some activity that is trying to do something with these issues. Very simply.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, maybe we doesn't need to wait to our last comment or last question. Let's close the evening. Thank you very much for your contribution. We really appreciate it.
Time and for your attention.
Well, it will be kept till forever on the internet, so we are grateful for
Oh my
that.
God.
And hopefully this is the last time we talk about these topics, because in future we doesn't need to deal with them. But
yeah, let's hope for the best.
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and probably we meet again in different situation, I hope.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to be personally again. outside all these.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone who saw this even till the end, and till next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.